Good afternoon, everybody. We are here for Coffee and Conversation, and we have Jenn Hoadley from the Alzheimer's Association. And Jenn is actually the liaison to the Neponset Valley Alzheimer's Partnership, for which I represent the Walpole Council on Aging. So it's been really nice working with her on the partnership, and we're so happy to have you here today. Thank you, Jenn. I can turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks for having me today. As Debbie mentioned, I work with the Alzheimer's Association. I'm the regional manager for Southeastern Massachusetts. And in that role, it means a lot of things. And we'll go through a little bit about what the Alzheimer's Association's mission is and the programs and services. I work more on the programs and services end of things. So we'll talk more about what that looks like. I also do a lot of volunteer management too. So it's great getting to know different people in our communities and helping us to all come together and hopefully back in person sooner rather than later. It's looking promising with all this traction we're getting with the vaccines. So it'll be nice to be able to actually be in the same room with people again. But it is nice seeing you here today. So thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen. I have a short PowerPoint that just kind of illustrates what we do and what our mission is all about. Let me just beginning. There we go. Can you see that okay? Great. Okay.
Yes, fine.
So the first slide I'm going to start with is about the facts and figures. It just really illustrates the prevalence of the disease. About 5.6 million Americans are currently living with Alzheimer's disease that we know of. We know that there's probably many more that don't have a diagnosis that aren't accounted for here. And on average, about 3 unpaid caregivers help out with each individual that's living with Alzheimer's. I won't go over all of these statistics and these details, but the long and short of it is that Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, it's expensive. It's a very expensive disease. In 2020, Alzheimer's and other dementias cost the nation about $305 billion, and that keeps increasing. By 2050, it's expected to rise as high as $1.1 trillion. It will bankrupt the healthcare system if a change isn't made. We will get more into the research end of things in this program, but this just to relate it to that fact right there, it's important that we drive research forward because if we don't see a change happen, it will bankrupt the healthcare system. So whenever I go out in the community and do a program, I often get the question, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? So I do like to start most of my programs with just kind of an overview of what is dementia. It's an umbrella term, and it's not a specific disease, but more of a term that just describes the symptoms related to somebody that has a cognitive decline that will impact their memory, their thinking, behavior, and even motor skills. A lot of different parts of our brain is impacted by the changes that happen due to Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. So dementia is an umbrella term. Alzheimer's is one reason why somebody might experience those symptoms of dementia. There's a lot of other reasons that we can talk a little bit about. There's a vascular type dementia where maybe the blood flow to the brain isn't as good as it used to be, or the oxygen's not getting to the brain as well as it used to. That can cause cell death. There's a Lewy body type dementia, which is a particular protein in the brain that can cause issues with cognitive decline. There's a lot of different reasons somebody might experience symptoms of dementia. So dementia is, again, that umbrella term, and there's different types of dementia. So important to find out what kind of dementia somebody is living with because the treatments can be different. They can vary. In this slide, we just talk about with Alzheimer's in the brain, we know that there's over 100 billion nerve cells in our brains. Alzheimer's causes these things called plaques and tangles that start to kind of interfere with the neurons in the brain. And if you look at the picture here, on the left-hand side, you'll see a healthy brain. And on the right-hand side, you see a brain that has those plaques and tangles. And for lack of better terminology, it kind of just gunks up the system so that the neurons can't communicate with each other. And when that happens, it can actually lead to cell death because of atrophy. The neurons just don't work properly anymore. And the next slide here shows a healthy brain on the left-hand side and a brain that has advanced Alzheimer's on the right-hand side. A healthy brain, we know, weighs about 3 pounds. A brain with advanced Alzheimer's disease weighs about 1 pound. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's a lot of mass that has been lost because of the cell death. There's actual holes in the brain where the cells have died. And so I do like to show this slide because I think it's important to see that it's actually physically changing the brain. Oftentimes, if somebody has an injury like a leg injury or they are in a sling in their arm, we're not going to ask them to pick up something heavy. But when somebody has an issue with their brain, we can't see it as well. We can only see some of the things that happen because of the changes in their brain. So this helps us to kind of see it as a physical change when we're actually looking at the brain comparison side by side. Risk factors. So everybody wants to know, what if it runs in my family? What if I have that family history, or what are those risk factors? So on the left side of this slide here, it shows us risk factors that we have no control over. We know that the number one risk factor is age. As we increase in age, our risk factor increases. And we do see it happen. It's more prevalent in women. And the thought is that women tend to live longer. So that we would see it more in women because of that, and age being the number one risk factor. There are other factors like family history and genetics, also racial and ethnic differences. We do know that older Black African Americans and Hispanics are more likely than older whites to have Alzheimer's and other dementias. So there's a lot of research going on right now looking at racial disparities and also looking at gender as well, and why are we seeing it more so in certain races and certain genders. So there's a lot of research now that's taking place that hopefully we can get more information about. Risk factors that we do have some control over on the right-hand side, like protecting our head. If we're going to go skiing or riding a bike or anything like that, we want to wear a helmet. Anything that we can do to prevent serious head injury. And this is for every generation. We want to make sure that from young kids playing sports, that if they're in a high impact sport, that they're wearing a helmet and being very cautious if their head is banged into from like a football type of thing, that they're being checked on very closely. That can definitely have play into their brain health later on in life. We also want to look at all those numbers, like looking at your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your weight, those types of things that we can control a little bit, being very having good communication with our doctor, making sure that we're in tune with those types of things, and doing, tweaking our lifestyle a little bit if we need to. And then just things like exercise, diet, staying active socially. And another is just challenging your brain to learn new things, taking part in things like even today, attending today and listening to this program, learning a little more about something that maybe you're not as familiar with. That can definitely help expand the pathways that and build new pathways in your brain. Now we're looking at the warning signs. And I do like to start this with a caveat that you may read this and identify with some of them. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh my gosh, this is really bad news. I think mainly the thing to take into account is, are you having changes that are interfering with your ability to live your day-to-day life? Sometimes people who have dementia, though, don't have that awareness that it is impacting their everyday life, because they just might not have the ability to recall something that's happened, or be able to apply what's happening to the situation around them. So we're going to talk about a few of these warning signs. We know that we do slow down with age physically, and our brains also will slow down a little too. So it's important to talk to your doctor if you see any of these changes taking place, so that you can kind of have that on their radar and they can keep an eye out on it, and you guys communicate with the doctor. There are a lot of reasons why somebody might experience some of these symptoms. So it's important not to jump to a conclusion that it's Alzheimer's or some other type of dementia. It could be a lot of other things. So again, so important to talk to your doctor about what's happening, and get the right tests to figure out what it might be. Things like a vitamin deficiency or a thyroid complication, even infections or depression, or even medications. You start a new medication or even a over-the-counter vitamin supplement, that can interact in a funny way that could leave some struggles with cognition. So really important to talk to your doctor, talk to your pharmacist as well, because they can sometimes get like a little red flag in the system that says, oh, this might interact funny in that with this drug. So very important to just keep that communication open, so that if there are any changes, that you're keeping them in the loop, and hopefully they can figure out a way to get you back to your normal baseline. So some things that we notice with the warning signs: memory loss that just disrupts your day-to-day life. Something that's normal, that's typical for age-related change, is that we might sometimes forget somebody's name or an appointment, but we'll recall it later. Usually for me, if I forget somebody's name, it'll be like 3 o'clock in the morning and I go, oh, and it comes to me and I'll wake up in the middle of the night with it. Another is challenges in planning or solving problems. You might see that, a light bulb needs to be changed, and for most people, you could say, okay, that light bulb needs to be changed. I got to go to the cabinet or the closet where I keep the spare light bulbs. And, you'd go through the steps to be able to change that light bulb. Somebody who has dementia might notice that the light bulb's out, but not be able to carry out the steps that it takes to change that light bulb. Other things like completing familiar tasks, confusion with time and place, your visual and spatial understanding becomes impacted. Language often becomes impacted. This one here, I think a lot of us will identify with, misplacing things. How many of you have ever misplaced something? I know I have. The big thing, the piece that I think we have to be most aware of is the second part of this, is misplacing and then losing that ability to retrace our steps. That's the key part. We're all going to misplace things from time to time, but if we lose the ability to be able to backtrack and think about, where was I when I last saw that? I always think about, we live busy lives, and, maybe you're coming in from the grocery store and you hear the phone ringing inside. And so you're just trying to get in so that you can get to it before the person hangs up. And, you get in quick and put the groceries on the counter, you get to the phone, and later on you're going, where did I put my keys? So it's thinking, where was I when I last had my keys? Okay, I came home from the grocery store, I was in a rush, I got in the door, so I must have put them here somewhere. And backtracking, and for me, it's probably in the door, in the keyhole. So being able to backtrack, that's key. If you misplace things, not a problem, but if you can't backtrack to find that or think about where you last saw them, that's when it becomes an issue. Often people with dementia will have decreased or poor judgment. Um, Another red flag for me is if somebody starts to withdraw from work or social activities, something that they've always enjoyed doing, but they just aren't coming to anymore. And that could be related to a few different reasons. One is that maybe they're not recalling that, they need to be at a certain place at a certain time to join in that activity. The other is that, if it is something that is a social activity with others, they may be more afraid of joining in because they're very self-conscious about making a mistake. They don't want to be found out that something's going on. So often it is difficult to join in because they don't want to make a mistake. And then also it relates back to that being able to follow the steps of accomplishing something. So, if you need to be at a certain place at a certain time, being able to make that happen becomes more and more difficult. So, if you do notice a friend or family member beginning to withdraw, it may mean that they need a little extra support to be able to get to those activities that they really have enjoyed. And then the last one is just changes in mood and personality. We do see that with some people where, they start to maybe not be as social as they used to be, or maybe more dismissive or cranky. It can go the other way too, though. Somebody who maybe was pretty cranky is now very friendly. So it just can impact people in different ways. I always say if you've met one person with Alzheimer's disease, you've truly just met one person with Alzheimer's disease, because it does affect people very differently. And that's, just we're all very different people, what makes us up as who we are as people. So important to consider that as well. I did talk a little bit about how there's a lot of research taking place. One of the issues with research is always trying to find funding to continue the research and finding volunteers to be part of the research. If you're interested in learning more about research, whether it's just to learn about what kind of research is happening in your area, or if you actually want to take part in that, you can go to our trial match on our website, or you can call our helpline, and they can get you connected to learn more about the variety of research that's happening. And research isn't always just medications. Sometimes it is testing new medications, but sometimes it's sleep studies, um, new brain scan technology, or lifestyle studies. There's actually a lifestyle study that's going to be happening out of Butler Hospital in Rhode Island, but many people from southeastern Massachusetts will hopefully also take part in it. And that's a lifestyle study where they're going to look at the impact of diet and exercise, and how that helps our brains. So if you would like to learn more about those types of things, certainly give us a call on our helpline. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the number's listed there, and it'll come up a couple more times throughout this program. And it's a great way just to learn about what's the status of research right now. We also have educational programs, talks called our ALS Talks, and that's another way to learn more about the latest in research and ask questions as well. We have one coming up later this month that's being done in Spanish, and another one in March that's in English. So if you want to learn more about when those are taking place and how to register to be able to attend. Currently, all of our programming is online and not in person, but we hope to get back to in person as soon as this pandemic settles down and people can start meeting in person again. So just to talk a little bit about our programs and services. So all of our programs and services are at no cost to families. We're able to do that because we have a variety of fundraising activities that we have, like our Walk to End Alzheimer's, our Ride to End Alzheimer's. We have a run-based team as well. We have a Boston Marathon team and other races as well. And we also have a program called The Longest Day, which is really, you can do any sort of activity to help raise awareness and funds for helping us to continue our programs and services, and also some of that funds raised also go toward research too. So our programs and services, we have our 24/7 helpline. We receive it's about 300,000 calls annually, and that's a way for us to kind of gauge that this is really important in our communities. That people call for lots of different reasons, whether it's for a list of home care agencies or nursing homes or day programs in their community or support groups, a variety of reasons why people might call. Sometimes people aren't really sure if they should call because they maybe don't have a question specifically. I always tell people, call us anyway, because we help you figure out what it is that you're trying to ask. Nobody is an expert in this until they have to be. And everybody starts somewhere from the beginning. So if you're not sure what to ask, just call us and we'll help you with that. We can send out written information to read more about the warning signs and ways to communicate, lots of different reasons why people might call. We also have our care consultation program, and that's just a more in-depth look at the individual situation and why, kind of making a plan for that situation. So that can be very helpful in terms of connecting, getting the right resources, and then figuring out how to apply that to the person living with the disease, as well as the family, the circle around them that it's helping. We have our support groups, which right now are online or by phone. And we will get back to the in-person soon, but right now they're all online or on the phone. We have a variety of education programs that we offer, and you can find that on our website, alz.org/MANH, or you can call our helpline and just ask about what kinds of programs are coming up. We have our ALS meetups, and that's for people who are in the earlier stages of dementia and their care partners. Typically, they're out in the community. Right now, we've had to get very creative, so we are still having our ALS meetups. They're just online, and we have great groups of people that are meeting and getting to know each other and sharing a common bond, but also doing something fun together. We have our safety services, which can help get people connected to like a medic alert type of program. And I already spoke about our trial match program. I want to leave some time for questions too, so I'm just going to go through this quick. I already kind of talked about the fundraising efforts. So if people are interested in getting involved in that, again, call our helpline. That's the best kind of gateway to all of the things that we do. People can get involved in helping to plan that or just having a team. Also advocacy, where we talk to elected officials and help lobby for more funding for all of the different pieces that we do, but also for research. We also have family support. Again, that's the education programs and our helpline, our care consultation program. So there are a lot of ways that people can get involved and help give back to the mission. And that's, again, our contact and ways you can get involved, and then the helpline number. So I'm going to pause here and just check to see, does anybody have any questions for me or anything that you'd like to talk about regarding the Alzheimer's Association, or just questions about dementia in general?
Can you hear me? I'm just wondering if there are any new treatments available.
Yeah, so right now there's some exciting things in the pipeline in the research area where we really haven't had any new medications in a long time. There are medications that can help kind of manage the symptoms right now, but right now in the research area, they are looking at some medications that might actually be able to slow down the progression of the disease. It's not FDA approved yet, so they're still in the trial period. But we're excited and really hopeful that that would be something that could really help change the trajectory of the disease.
Just another question. What's the best place to take care of a person? Would it be at home or a nursing facility?
Sure, yeah. I think that is a tough question to answer. It's a great question, but I think that it's so individual. So for somebody who has, the proper setup of their home, where it's safe and they have plenty of care available to be able to support that. Home can be a good place, but it's not always the right place. It varies. I think so much has to be considered in terms of who is available to be able to help with the care. Is it bringing in private care? Are they able to meet the skilled needs of that person? In a nursing home setting, they have to have skilled needs in order to be able to meet that care. So they do have specialized nurses and things like that to be able to help with meeting the needs of that person. There's also assisted living, and then there's home care agencies that can come into the home. And then there's also day programs for some people that can help with kind of being that activity that's outside of the home that the person can engage in. It gives the caregiver at home a break. It gives the person living with dementia a break from being at home and also engaging in some activity, which is really helpful. So I don't think there's any one right answer. I think it's very individual. And if you're looking for, different options that might fit a certain situation, I definitely recommend giving the helpline a call. And that way you can find out a little more about each different program and what might fit the best.
Just another question.
Sure.
How effective are the drugs that they're using now to fight this disease?
Sure. Yeah. Again, it's so individual. There's not one right, here's the drug for everybody, because some people experience negative side effects from certain medications. Some people have said, this doesn't seem to be doing anything for me. And others say, this feels like it's, given me kind of that lift of the brain fog where they feel like they're functioning a little better. So I don't know that there's any one right way. I think that the best thing people can do is be open to communicating, especially in the early stages of the disease where the person is able to communicate their wishes and their needs on what they want to see happen. And then really just finding the right supports. So sometimes medication is the right path, but I think medication on its own is not necessarily the only thing to do. I think having various forms of support, whether that's just having people around them learn different communication techniques and how the disease might impact the brain and how they might change a little bit, that can be huge in terms of trying to help that person be as successful and independent as possible.
Just another question does this run in the family?
So genetics play a small piece. If somebody has a family history, just like any other type of illness or chronic illness that runs in somebody's family. So if, say, heart disease runs in your family, it puts you at a greater risk for developing it yourself. But it doesn't necessarily mean you will develop it. So that's kind of the same with Alzheimer's. Most people, if it runs in their family, it just increases your risk. There is a very small percentage, I think it's like less than 2% of people that develop Alzheimer's disease have a particular gene that is deterministic, that would mean that they actually could test for it and say you will develop Alzheimer's disease, but that's a very, very low percentage of people that actually have that. And typically, if they did have that, they would see many family members, a long line of family members that developed Alzheimer's, and typically very young. So I think, if that's something that somebody's noticing in their family, is that many people in their family are developing Alzheimer's very young, that would probably be on the radar of their physician to possibly look at genetic testing.
So is there a test for the younger people as we're getting older to go to the doctor and get tested? If someone in the family's already had it, can we get tested as a younger person?
So most of the time they wouldn't go that route, just because, again, it's very unlikely that you carry the deterministic familial gene. However, most doctors now are doing something that's a cognitive test, that you go for your regular checkup, and they'll do something like a mini mental status exam, where they would ask questions like, they'll tell you 3 words when you get into the office, and then they might ask you to tell you what those 3 words were later on in the appointment. Or they might have you draw a clock and, ask you to, put it so that it says 2:30 or something like that. So they're trying to kind of gauge where your cognition is. And more and more doctors are doing that more frequently, so that they can kind of get a baseline and then track to see are there changes happening. So that's most of the testing that's going on right now. Again, though, a lot of people are opting to get involved in the research realm of things, to be able to get tests that maybe aren't typical for a doctor to order. So it is a way to kind of, maybe get a brain scan that wouldn't have been ordered by your doctor, just for, your own knowledge, to know, like, this is what my brain looks like right now, and maybe later down the line do a comparison.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry I took all that time up.
No, that's great. Good questions. And if you think of another one in the middle of the night, call our helpline. Somebody will answer for sure.
Gotcha.
Anyone else have any questions for Jenn? Go ahead, Janet, you're on mute.
Yes, I have a question. I don't know. I'm Dorothy, though. Did Jen have a question?
Janet did, but why don't we let Janet go?
Janice. Yeah, let Janice, yeah.
Go ahead, Janet.
Any news about diet? Is there a certain diet that might be better for somebody who may get this disease?
Sure, yeah. So what we know is that what's good for our heart is good for our brain. So any sort of heart healthy diet that we can have, and exercise as well, is going to be helpful to our brain. There's a lot of research that looks at the Mediterranean diet. So lots of green leafy vegetables, fish, less red meat, and less processed foods. One kind of good rule to follow is, if you're at the grocery store, to shop the perimeter of the grocery store, because that's less of the processed foods. It's more of the more natural kind of state of foods. So shopping that perimeter is always a good idea. Try to avoid the sugary, added and processed kind of foods.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Thank you. As I was listening, you said 300 billion, which is amazing to me. And you said, the before and after brain was like a pound versus it's originally 3 pounds. There's holes that develop in the brain when this starts to happen. And that's my first question. Do the holes ever, because of atrophy, ever, whether it's something that's boosting, like you're saying, it could be social activity, it could be diet, it could be, less depression, whatever it is that you have as like possible causes, would that revert it, in other words, so that you won't have so much holes, you won't have that atrophy? That was my first question. because 1 out of 3. And then when you were talking about, you didn't say, you said that the football, because I'm thinking of young people, and I'm thinking how early can this start, and you mentioned the football, and the football players and stuff, and they're usually young, high school players, even younger. And so can this affect their brain to the point of starting Alzheimer's at that young an age? And then the third question was, you touched upon, changing a light bulb. And you said, some people just don't know how to go. They know it needs to be fixed, but they don't know how to go back and go through the process. And I'm thinking, like, you mentioned it's in the cabinet. So, I mean, the process would be getting it out of the cabinet, putting it in the, taking the old one out and putting the new one in and putting the old one somewhere. So, I mean, it didn't seem like it was a major process. So I'm wondering, there was like 3 steps, and I'm wondering about that, these questions.
Okay, so I'm going to start with your first question. I had to write these down because I want to
the holes in the brain, and is there something that can revert it back if you have proper nutrition, better, more social activities, challenging your brain, whatever you were saying, less depression, whatever you were saying could possibly help you,
Right.
better heart foods, things like that. Could that possibly revert the holes? That bothered me to hear that. Holes in the cells of these brain, will they repair themselves to be normal again?
Yeah, so right now, with all of the research and everything that's gone on, there's no bringing, if a cell has died, there's no bringing it back to life. However,
so there isn't. Okay.
That being said, you can still do the healthy, exercise and healthy eating and all those things, and that can help you to create new pathways in your brain. So we know that we don't use our brains to full capacity, and I'm not saying that's all of us. We don't use all of our brain cells all the time. So creating new pathways can actually give us what's called a cognitive reserve. So when something does happen, let's say somebody has a stroke and there's cell death because of a stroke. Oftentimes people are left, not being able to use certain muscles in their body, or they have to retrain their brain to be able to speak and eat and all of those different functions again. It is possible to be able to create new pathways to be able to accomplish things.
How about if they were just damaged? How are they if they're just damaged and not completely dead? How about if they were just damaged? Couldn't they be repaired?
I don't know that, I'm not sure that the cell can necessarily be repaired or not. But I think it's about creating,
Pathways.
building that new pathway to be able to utilize. Yeah. And then your next question was about football.
The footballs, and how early can someone, when you mentioned that.
So it does start early. If we have many concussions early on in life, that can impact how our brain functions later in life. So this is so important for young people and parents to take very seriously if they're having their kids play a contact sport, or even skateboarding or skiing or any riding their bike. I know it used to be kids didn't want to wear their helmets. I think it's more accepted now. It used to be that on the ski slopes it was really rare to see somebody wearing a helmet. Now you see it's very rare not to see somebody wearing one. So
it would impact them later in life, not actually at that time. Even if they got a concussion, it may not get them at that time. Am I understanding correctly? It may affect them later, 10, 20, 30 years down the line. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then about the light bulb, it didn't seem so complicated. And yet you said that could be a process for someone. In what way?
Yeah, because what ends up happening is that ability to initiate action is impacted. So it's not even, part of it is organizing the thought of, here are the steps that I need to take to do it, but also the ability to be able to initiate, here's what I need to do, now I go do it, becomes affected. So even though it does sound so simple, it can become very complicated. And, the light bulb one was just, an example, but it could be even making a meal, paying your bills, all of those kinds of things can be impacted just because the being able to initiate the action to make that happen and follow the steps to make that happen. And
But you said
sometimes
too, like some things could be mixed up because if someone's overwhelmed with the bills and they feel like they can't pay them all and they know that they have to, go different avenues to get them, that may be not really Alzheimer's, but they have to go, to see if they can get help, whether it's St. Vincent de Paul, somebody to help them. Do you know what I
Sure.
mean? In that time, it may not be Alzheimer's.
Right. Yeah. Some people may have something that's called a mild cognitive impairment. That sometimes can be like a foreshadowing to dementia happening down the line. And sometimes it just stays as a mild cognitive impairment. It's not enough of an impairment to really impact all of their day-to-day activities, but it's enough to, if you went and had testing, it would show up on the test.
I read it was on the front of National Geographic or one of the magazines when I was in a store. I think it was Roach Brothers. It was one of them, Reader's Digest or something. And I was very interested in the article about the brain. And then it said doctors only know a third of the brain. That's all they know. Is that true? So, I mean, how much do they really know of this 300 billion, what's going on?
Yeah, it's pretty wild that, we put a man on the moon, but we still don't know a lot about our own bodies and how they function. And the brain is still an area that it's amazing how much we are learning still.
Right. And then somebody else told me too, a funeral director. He said, when someone dies, I always thought it was the heart because both my parents died from heart attacks years ago. And so I said, oh, it's the heart, right? And he said, I remember him telling me, no, it's not. And I said, I thought that's how they consider someone dead. He said, no. He said, it's the brain waves. He said, the heart, in other words, starts producing the blood to the brain that will give them the brain waves because the brain takes care of the whole body. So, tells the body what to do, but it's actually the heart. So when you were saying hot foods are very good, that made sense to me. It's like you got to have a very healthy heart to send those brain waves very good into your brain. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what they go by. The brain waves have to be dead.
Absolutely.
Isn't that correct when someone dies?
Yeah, I mean, our brains are basically like computer system of our body. It tells all the other things in our body what to do. So
yeah, that's what they said. Yeah,
it will impact other parts of our body.
Okay. Jenn, this has all been so helpful.
Thank
really
you.
well done. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. And again, I want to plug the helpline again because I think oftentimes we will come up with questions in the middle of the night, like I said, and we're there. We're here to listen. We're here to help. So anytime, even if you're not exactly sure what it is that you want to ask, we do help you figure that out. We get lots and lots of those calls.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Jenn, and good seeing
Thank you.
everybody.